Awesome. How's everyone doing? Good, all right. A little more alive there. That's great. If I've never met you before, my name is Jared. Thanks for being here with us this morning. I was thinking back this last week and reminiscing on my college years, because what else do you have to do but just to think back on younger years? And I was thinking about my first year in college. I lived in a dorm room my first year, so I made the trip up to the university, and whatever I could fit in my car, I packed in my car. I moved up there, moved into this dorm room, shared the room with another guy. And over that year, I found myself accumulating way more than I expected. Like all of a sudden, I had kind of what I felt like was my own space. I could do whatever I wanted with it. And so I'd see free furniture outside of apartments there on campus, and it looked terrible and it was beat up, but I was like, that's going to my dorm room. And I'd take that back to the dorm room. I started making trips to Goodwill, felt like every week, and just picking out these outfits and these games and this artwork that I probably shouldn't have been getting, but I was filling my dorm room with more and more stuff. My roommate and I, we made a dorm room hot tub and figured out how to siphon the water to where the water would stay hot. We were just looking to see if we could pack every inch of this dorm room that we could. And what I didn't think about as I was accumulating all this stuff was that eventually I would have to figure out what to do with all of this. I would be going back during the summertime to live with my parents and had to figure out what to do with all this stuff. I could rent some storage space and put the extra stuff in the storage space that wouldn't fit in my car heading back. I could get a trailer and haul all of my stuff back. The problem was that everything that I'd accumulated over that year, the value was probably less than $85. Like, it wasn't worth me paying all this extra money to haul this stuff back. So I had to make some tough decisions and look at all my stuff and evaluate what is worth taking with me in my car, and what do I just need to leave behind and not worry about. And so I made the tough decision to leave some things that I felt like were kind of important, had value in the moment, behind because I couldn't fit it on my car ride home. This is something that all of us have to do at some point, whether it's with the dorm room or other factors in life. We're constantly figuring out what has to be left behind. What am I going to take with me? Maybe you, in recent times, have moved to a new house, and maybe your new house could have enough space for all the things that you had at your old house, but that's a great time. You start to figure out, I need to declutter. This is a perfect time to figure out, what do I actually want to take with me to my new house? Because we all know what it's like. We accumulate more and more stuff, and we just find space for it. We stack it on top of other things. We keep gathering more things, and so you have to decide, what's worth taking with me to my new space? What do I need to leave behind? Or maybe as your kids get older and they go off to college, or they move out to work a job, it's a natural time to figure out how you want your house to function. Do we want to restructure some things to where we still have a great space for our kids to come home, but it doesn't have to stay the same? And so maybe you make some decisions on things that were great for a certain season that now you need to leave behind and make a new space for this new season you're walking into. Maybe it goes beyond just physical items. I'm sure you, like myself, have had seasons where we begin to do an evaluation of our life, and we figure out, hey, maybe there's some patterns of life, there's some rhythms, there's some ways of life that I need to tweak going forward. There's some things that just need to be in the past. These patterns of life, these ways that I were thinking and living, they don't need to go forward with me into this next season of life, because just like with a house, without realizing it, you and I can find that we've housed a bunch of things that we really don't need in our life. And sometimes those things are neutral, but lots of times we house things in our life and make space for it in our mental space, in our heart, and emotionally, that we really shouldn't be taking with us throughout our life. Some of those things, if we're not careful, we can allow things like guilt and shame and self-doubt, comparison, unhealthy habits to begin to enter our life, and we just make space for it. We figure out how to fit into our life, and we allow it to be a part of who we are. For me personally, I have to constantly check for something called worry. Worry, worry, worry. That is the thing in my life that if I'm not careful will constantly creak into who I am, and I just make space for it, and I just say, I'm a person that worries. It becomes a part of my life. Worry is a common thing. It's not like any of you guys are like, what's that word? Let me write it down so I can go figure out and look it up later of what worry is. We all know how it feels to worry and how often we can find ourselves worrying. It's so common for us, I think it's worth spending some time this morning discussing it. We're all familiar with worry, but I think some definitions can make sure that we're all on the same page. I think this definition sums it up well. Worry is a state of uncertainty over actual or potential problems. Actual or even potential problems. Another definition is allowing one's mind to dwell on difficulty or troubles. Another thought is that the worry is to be pulled in different directions. At the end of the day, worry is wrong thinking in the mind and wrong feeling in the heart. It involves both our heart and our mind. It's wrong thinking in our mind and it's wrong feeling in our heart. And if you were to examine your life, worry is probably something that you should take account for as well. And whether you describe yourself as an anxious person or not, I'm an anxious person. It's just, it feels like it creeps in all the time. Whether you would describe yourself as an anxious person, we all would agree that it's rather easy to find ourselves falling into this trap of worrying. And the more that we worry, the more things that we worry about, it takes up precious space in our mind, in our life, and in our heart. And if we examine it, there's millions of aspects of life that we can find ourselves falling into the trap of worrying. If you're a parent, you know that worrying is just a part of what happens with your kids. We begin to worry, am I providing what I need to for my kids, physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually? I can't be with my kids every second of every day. What are they being exposed to? Are they being treated fairly? Are they being exposed to things I don't want them to? You can find yourself worrying about your marriage. And you start to worry, is this just a difficult season we're in? Or are there underlining huge issues that if we don't address, we could find ourselves completely separating ourselves? If you are new and trying to get your foot in the door as a first-time home buyer, you can worry about that. And you look at the market and you say, unless I start robbing banks, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford to buy my first house. We can find ourselves worrying about our work. And you maybe have been laid off in recent times. You see other people in the company being laid off, and you begin to worry, if I don't give 135% every second of every day, I could be next. And worry fills our life. You could worry about money. And it always feels like, man, I just wish I had a little bit more money in case these emergencies come up to make sure that I'm taking care of me and my family for the future. We can worry about our health. Maybe you've been given some diagnosis that completely rocked your world. Maybe a close family or friend has been given a diagnosis, a health diagnosis, and you start to worry, man, that could happen to me. Any moment, just like that, life can be flipped upside down. We can find ourselves worrying about just about everything in life. And it feels like in that moment that we have no control, that worry is forced upon us. But the truth is, if we start to pull back those layers, is that worry is a choice that we make. It's a choice that's made in distrust. Whether that choice is made because of uncertainty of the future, and we say, I don't know how things are going to play out, so I have to worry every second about every possible potential thing that could take place. Whether that choice to worry is made out of a fear of failure. We don't want to let down the people around us. We don't want people to think less of us, and so we worry about every conversation, interaction, and every choice that we make. Whether that choice to worry is made because of a need to control. We think we've got to grip everything as tightly as possible and worry about every aspect of life. Whatever it may be, we make the choice to worry because we believe we have to. And the situation can be very real. Like, we're going to have situations that are very overwhelming, situations that feel beyond us. But our response to those things are what we're going to look at today. The way that we respond to those overwhelming situations, that's the choice that we get to make. Jesus said in Matthew 6, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? I don't know about you, but I've never personally met anyone that was able to prove to me that through their worrying, they added hours to their life. Like, no one's shown me a PowerPoint to show, like, hey, if you worry in these ways, you're going to find more time in your schedule. It just doesn't happen. And not only does worry not add hours to our life, worry negatively affects us in more ways than we tend to realize. We don't take into account how much worry does to us. The Old English root from which we get our word worry means to strangle. I think it's a pretty good definition, a pretty good picture of what worry does to us. It strangles us and it affects us mentally and emotionally, physically with headaches and back pains, neck pains. It affects our thinking, our sleeping, even our coordination. Worry doesn't help you live life in a better way. Worry doesn't make you a more efficient worker in your job. Worry doesn't make you a better spouse, a better parent. Worry doesn't make you healthier or happier. Worry only steals your joy. It only decreases the way that you think and the way that you feel in your life. Imagine we're all on the same page about this. I think we'd all prefer not to worry. I don't think anyone's going to stand up and try to fight me on the fact that they think worry is good for their life. And for you and I, if we knew that we had the opportunity to leave worry behind, I think we'd all take it. I think if we all were given the choice of, hey, do you want to leave worry behind and pick up something better going forward, I think we'd take that deal. But the bigger question for all of us this morning is that even possible? Like, we know how easy it is to worry. Is it possible to actually leave worry behind and to pick up something else in exchange? Today, we're going to look at a couple verses from the book of Philippians, which is in the New Testament of our Bible. And it's a book that was written, and it was actually a letter written by Apostle Paul. And he wrote this to a church, a group of people in the city of Philippi. And in these verses, Paul's going to throw a goal towards them and a goal towards us reading it today that seems almost unrealistic. It's like, Paul, is this actually even possible? And here's the goal that he's going to give to us. He's going to call us to move from worry to peace. He's going to tell us, hey, if you really want to live in the way that God's called you to live, here's what you have to do. Here's your goal, and it's achievable. You have to put down worry and pick up peace instead. And it's like, Paul, that sounds great. Like, I would love to do that. And I could see that on a coffee mug. Like, that sounds good in theory, but is it actually practically something that we could do? Like, Paul, I don't know what it was like when you were writing this, but you didn't write it in 2025. You don't know the things that we have to worry and be anxious about. But today, we're going to see that Paul's completely set on this belief that it's possible. So if it's okay with you, let's give Paul the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he proposes. And if the goal is to move from worry to peace, let's start to identify, what does that journey look like? It's not just a one-time decision, it's a journey. So what would that journey look like? So let's start with worry. We all know what worry and being anxious is all about. So let's start with that. And Paul writes in Philippians 4, verse 6, do not be anxious about anything. That sounds amazing. I would love to not be anxious about anything. Like, if I could, I would definitely choose to not be anxious about anything, but there must be some type of catch. But Paul says there's no catch. It's actually possible to take your worry and to transition it to peace. So what does that path look like? How do we go from worry to peace? How are we supposed to deal with our worries in the here and now? And Paul's going to answer that in the next part of verse 6. He tells us how to begin to move from worry to peace, and he says this, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Paul's telling us the path to peace starts with prayer. It's a journey, it's a path, and the path starts with prayer. Prayer is the discipline of engaging with God who's already with us. And instead of us thinking that we have to bear every single worry ourselves, that we've got to shoulder all of the different factors that go into what worry is, instead of doing that, we are called to take those same worries and to give them to God. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but when my oldest daughter, Juliet, was really little, she wanted to always give me her trash. Like, there was something about it. She did not like to have trash with her. And she, even if I was standing next to 100 trash cans, she would choose to come give the trash directly to me. Like, she just loved giving her trash to me. She didn't like thinking that there was trash around her, that she'd be responsible for making sure that was thrown away. It was kind of a big deal at that time. And I remember one time in the car, we're driving, and I can tell that she's upset about something. She's itty-bitty in her car seat. I can tell she's upset with something. And I thought, I'm sure that this has to do with some type of trash. Like, she probably had some kind of snack or candy, and she does not want to have that trash anymore. Sure enough, it definitely was because of trash. She wanted to go ahead and give me her trash in that moment. And I tried to explain to her, hey, it's dangerous. I'm driving right now. I can't get that trash from you. Can we stop, and then I'll get the trash from you? But that was not good enough. She needed to immediately give that trash to me in that moment. And so I reached my hand back, and after 10 minutes, I finally was able to grab that trash from her. And you could sense in that moment the stress and the worry of that trash was gone. But here's the thing. I didn't pull over and put it in a trash can. The trash was still in the car with us, but she could stop worrying about it because she knew that her daddy was going to take care of it now. It was over to her daddy. She trusted that I would do something with the trash. She didn't have to worry about it anymore. This actually has a lot to do And it's very similar to our journey with prayer and with giving our worries to God. Because Paul's telling us, if you really want to start this journey of moving from worry to peace, you have to take those worries and you give them to God. And you do that through something called supplication. Supplication is the action of asking or begging for something earnestly or humbly. It's you and I sharing our needs and our problems with God. It's the help me prayers. It's the moments where we say, God, I am too overwhelmed. This situation that's in front of me, I can't figure out how to move forward. Help me, I desperately need it. And when you think about it, worry and prayer, they have some similarities. In both scenarios, you're thinking through the scenario, it's circulating in your mind as you're trying to comprehend how to navigate it emotionally and mentally. The difference with worry is that you have no connection to an endpoint. You're just chewing on it and chewing on it and chewing on it. You never digest it. You're just chewing on it. You're spinning in circles with no direction. There's no connection to some type of endpoint. But with prayer, you take that same worry, you're thinking through it, but you take that worry, and instead of spinning in circles with no direction, you hand those worries over to God, and you leave the results up to Him. I love something that Martin Luther said. It's a quote that says, "Pray and let God worry." You pray and you let God worry. You let the one who's actually able to do something with the scenario and the worry to do something with it, to be in control of the result. That's exactly what we see happen with the life of Jesus when he was here on earth. We see an account of him in the Garden of Gethsemane. And these are moments shortly before he knew he was going to go to the cross, to die on the cross for all of mankind and the sins of the world. And he knows that that's going to happen, and he's overwhelmed and he's stressed because of the weight, the death he would soon endure. He knew there would be separation from God the Father for a time. He was overwhelmed. And we see in Matthew 26, going a little farther, he fell to his face to the ground and he prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Jesus is overwhelmed. He is overwhelmed and stressed with what's about to take place, but he goes to God in prayer, his Father. He takes those worries and he gives them to God. He says, "God, I'm going to trust you in this scenario that feels too overwhelming for me to comprehend right now." It's natural, it's human nature to be stressed, to worry about what's going to happen, what is happening in the moment, but we are not called to hold onto that worry and to bear it ourselves. Whatever we find ourselves worrying about, Jesus shows us the need to take it to God, to share our issues on this worry. We need those help me prayers. But by doing this, it doesn't mean that you and I stop growing. It doesn't mean that we don't try to do everything in our power to take positive steps forward, to grow and to surround ourselves with the right people. We can't pray and then not study for the test and just hope to ace the test. We don't pray and then not go on date nights with our spouse or not go to counseling and just think that our marriage is going to magically get better. It's a combination of us doing the hard work with what's in front of us and giving those worries to God. The difference is that we don't place the results on our shoulders. We don't have to worry about what the outcome is going to be. You leave the results up to God. You work hard, but you allow Him to dictate the outcome. You let God worry, like Martin Luther said. I want to circle back really quick to those first 4 words in that verse. It said this, "But in every situation." There's not a limit. We don't hit a max at a certain point and then all of a sudden we can't go to God with anything else. It's an ongoing conversation. We don't have to just take the big issues to God. Every situation, only the big things, they aren't the same terminology. God really does want us to approach Him about anything and everything. God is unlike us. He's able to hear every single worry that we may have and not get overwhelmed. And the more that you start taking those worries to God, the more natural it becomes. You have to be really intentional about it in the beginning because at first, like we know, when a big problem comes our way, when we get overwhelmed with life situations, our tendency is to start worrying and start thinking through every possible scenario. If I do this, what if they say this? And what if I go over here and this happens? We take on that worry, we try to bear it ourselves. But the sooner that we can begin to think through and say, you know what, this is something I'm going to work hard with, but I'm going to give it over to God. I'm going to let Him come up with the outcome. The more that we do that, the more natural it becomes. And the more natural it becomes, the more peace we begin to experience in our life because we aren't bearing it alone. So the path to peace, it starts with prayer. We have to go to God. We have to communicate with God. That leads us to our next aspect. The path of peace continues through thankfulness. A key aspect here with our supplication prayers is this part with thanksgiving. We can't zoom over that too quickly. Each of these help me prayers where we're asking God for help, these are supposed to be filled with appreciation, with giving thanks to God, thanking him for who he is, all the blessings that he's poured out on your life, thanking him for what he's done, what he's going to continue to do in your life. And you're to thank God even before you know the results of what you're praying for. Too often, if we thank God, it's because we've seen the outcome of the thing that we're praying for, and it worked out in the way that we wanted, and it was exactly how we hoped it would, and then we go, God, thank you for that. Thank you for the way that you led and directed me during that time. But this is saying if we're going to pray with thanksgiving, it means that while you're praying for it, long before you know the results, you're already thanking God. Henry Blackaby, a longtime pastor and author, said this: thankfulness is a conscious response that comes from looking beyond our blessings to the source. And the reason that praying with thanksgiving is so important is because it directs us back to God. It gets us looking at the source. It directs us back to all the things that God has already done for us. Not only the times that he's come through for us in the past, but also ultimately reflecting on Jesus' death and his resurrection. That God loved us enough to do that. It reflects back to that. And when we're thanking God, it's hard in the moment to keep worrying. When thankfulness is on your mind, you don't typically think of as many negative things in your life. For example, if I were to be driving home from work and all of a sudden I get caught in traffic, I live off Highway 2, so it's very easy during ski season to get caught in a lot of bumper-to-bumper traffic. And for some reason, people don't like to wait. And so people are trying to cut in even though they haven't been waiting 20 minutes to try to make their way up. And easily in that moment, it leads to frustration. It leads to me being so upset, getting fired up like that. Let's just say I finally make it home and I pull into the driveway and I start to make my way up the stairs to our house. If my wife, Jessica, is standing at the door with a gift, something that I've been wanting for such a long time, something I didn't think I was going to get. All of a sudden, she's giving me this gift, and it's not my birthday, it's not a holiday, she's just giving it because she loves me. In that moment, hopefully I'm not going to say, put that box down. You've got to hear about my commute. You would not believe what just happened on the way here. No, at least for that moment, I'm going to forget about all the frustration I had just moments before. And I'm just going to be thankful that I'm receiving this gift. I'm going to be pumped that I'm receiving this gift. Thankfulness will overshadow the negative emotions and thoughts that I had the moment before. That's what happens with thankfulness in our life. When we allow thankfulness to be a part of who we aren't so focused on the negative aspects of life. And it's a part of this path to peace. We can keep worry away as we show gratitude to God for all he's done, what he is doing in our life, what he's going to do in the future. So the path to peace, it starts with prayer. It continues through thankfulness. And it ends with trust. As we pray about everything, as we show thankfulness to God, as we reflect on what he's already done in our life, we begin to see our trust in God grow. Because we've led to a firmer belief that God will actually care for our needs. When we put our trust in God, and the more that we trust him, the more that this thought of that God will care for my needs, it goes from our head down to our heart. And we begin to believe it in the core of who we are, that God will not let us down, that he will come through for us, even if it feels too overwhelming in the moment. I've sat down in my office chair downstairs so many times over the past few years. Who knows how many times I've sat in my chair in my office. And after the first time or two, I realized this is a good quality chair. And so from then on, I didn't, every time I go down to my office chair, go and inspect it and worry, is this thing going to hold me? Like, it's never creaked in the past. It's never given me any reason to think that it might break. But is it going to hold me this time? No. I just go and I jump off my desk right onto my chair. I do a flip onto my chair. I'm not worried about if it's going to hold me. It has held me enough times before to realize that there's nothing I need to do but have faith that it's going to hold me again. The same thing happens in our life with God. When we see God come through time and time again, we start to see our trust in him build. And the more that we trust him, the more that our faith builds that God's going to do it again. He hasn't let me down yet. What makes me think he's going to let me down this time? And we're still going to naturally find ourselves worrying about things, but the more that we can take a hold of our trust being in God, the sooner we're able to dismiss that worry and realize this is not something I need to worry about. This is something I need to hand over to God. And it's because our trust was built in him. And we can have peace that he will provide for us once again. I love the verse in Proverbs 3, starting in verse 5. It says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. That word translated trust here means to lie helpless face down. It's a picture of a servant waiting for the master's command, readiness to obey. It's humbling ourselves, choosing to lean on God's understanding, not our own. And when we do this, God promises to take those worries that we have, and he takes them away, and he begins to guide our steps. He doesn't give us the full picture of how everything's going to look, but he promises to guide each one of our steps for what's going to be best for us, what's going to be best for the kingdom of God. This path to peace, it starts with prayer. It continues through thankfulness, and it ends with trust. That's the formula for leaving worry behind and picking up peace. And it's a lifelong journey. It's not like we figure this out today and then we never have worry be an issue before. It's a lifelong journey. But the more that we do it, the more it becomes a part of our life. And once we start to achieve this peace, something special happens. And we see it in the next verse. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Through salvation, a person receives peace with God. No longer an enemy of God, there's unity with God. You receive salvation, you have peace with God. But by pressing into the relationship with God, by learning to trust him more, by growing in your relationship with God, a believer begins to receive the peace of God. Not only do you have peace with God, but the peace of God begins to surround your life. No matter what difficulty comes your way, no matter what obstacle you see in front of you, no matter how difficult the things in front of you seem, the peace of God surrounds your life. And it's a peace that doesn't make sense. And you may have seen people before go through extreme tragedy, and somehow they just have this peace about them that, based off of the circumstances, based off of the facts, they should not have. It almost makes them look crazy in the moment, this peace that they have surrounding them. They're still sad, they're still emotional, they're still dealing with the chaos around them, but they just have this peace that doesn't make sense. It goes beyond our comprehension, but it's the peace of God that does something in our life in ways that we can't understand in the moment. But as we lean into him, as we trust him more, that peace begins to surround us in a deeper way. The peace of God, it will guard your heart. It will guard your mind. It protects you from wrong feelings in the heart, wrong thinking in the mind. So as something comes your way, something that would have initially caused you to worry, or maybe something that you've worried about for years and years, instead of it immediately infiltrating your mind and just making a place in your heart and your life, it just becomes a part of who you are. We see here that the peace of God stands there almost like a bouncer, like checking IDs before it makes its way into your heart. And if the Holy Spirit sees that there's something about to enter your life that it should not enter, it warns you, it prompts you, and it says, hey, this is something that if you're not careful can become a part of who you are, and it's a worry. It goes against God. This guilt, this shame, this comparison, it's not something that needs to be a part of who you are. And in that moment, you get to make the decision. Is this something that I'm going to believe? Is this a choice that I'm going to make in distrust? Am I going to allow this to be a part of my life? Or am I going to allow this to be something that I hand over to God? And I say, God, this is not something that I need to see the end result on. I'm going to give you this worry. I'm going to work hard in what's around me. I'm going to surround myself with the right people. But I'm going to trust that you are going to do what you need to in this situation. And like my daughter Juliet with our car and trash being in the car, you won't see the end result. That trash is still going to be in the car, but you're able to hand that over to God and let go of the pressure and the stress. And you won't know the end result. You don't know how that worry is going to work out. You don't know how the situation or scenario is going to work out. But you know that you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to be stressed because you're handing it over to the creator of the universe that is able to do something with that worry. And you trust him with the outcome, that you know that he already knows the end result that's going to be best for you and for his kingdom. This could be the season where you begin to worry less, where you don't put the stress on yourself to have to dictate every aspect of life, where you instead put down the worry and pick up peace in exchange. And you take peace with you into this next journey. And you work hard with what God places in front of you, but you leave the results up to him. just think about how much more peaceful your life could be if you allowed yourself to give your worries to God. What worry for you right now are you not going to let dictate your life anymore? What situation do you need to say, this is not something that I'm going to let call the shots? I'm not going to let it be a part of who I am in my mind and my heart, but instead I'm going to give this worry over to God today. My hope, my prayer, is that one worry at a time will transition to peace in your life. I want to pray for you right now. God, we thank you for the way that you work in our life. We thank you that you desire to take our worries, that you desire to take our anxieties, that you desire to take the things that are dragging us down, and you want to take that away, and you want to give us peace instead. That you want to give us your peace that's going to help us begin to walk through life with confidence. And the trials are still going to be there. We're still going to have to deal with the things that are in front of us, but our confidence in the trials change. And we know that you are in control and that you call us to follow your lead and to look to you daily for life and strength. So I pray for each person here, whatever that means for them, that you'll direct their steps on what that can look like, taking one step forward. We thank you for your love that you pour out on us, God. It's in your name. Amen.